Buenos dias, mi amigas, amigos. Let me see. I'm trying to learn Spanish a little bit at a time. It is a very muy bonita day outside today. Oh, live with Dr. Mom. It's Wednesday in the middle of the week. Beautiful day outside. Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Friday, we're looking at almost 80 or something around there. I love spring. I love going. One of my favorite holidays is Memorial Weekend. I love Memorial Weekend. It feels like it's the start of summer. We got a whole summer ahead of us. I'm excited. Good things happening this summer. So welcome. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Mom, a doctor of higher education leadership, business person, entrepreneur, mom, grandma, widow, friend. I flip houses. I'm doing a house remodel project. I'm doing bodybuilding competition in the summer, which is going to be super exciting. I do that. I do other series. My other two series, I do a live video on Friday for bodybuilding and Saturday or Sunday for my house remodel, which I'm just about done on. And then I'm going, tomorrow I get an RV and I'm going mobile. So today is my series on moving forward. And this series goes Monday through Friday. I try to post it around this 1 o'clock is when I air it. I don't know when everybody gets it, but I try to post it at 1 o'clock. So it's steady every day. So my Moving Forward series is about helping other people move forward through my experiences. It helps me. By doing this, it's helping me move forward with my life. This is a whole new phase for me. I feel like I'm at a place where lots of changes happen. I wouldn't have thought back 5 years ago even that I would be doing this today. But it's where I believe my higher power, God, yours may be the universe, some other things, but mine is God. I believe this is where he's leading me. So here I am. So my Moving Forward series was developed out of a 100-day video challenge that I did on Facebook. Several of my friends, we worked together we just kind of evolved with each other's help. And out of it came a Moving Forward series. And so the three principles we kind of established was, in order to move forward, you need a very strong foundation. You need a foundation of some sort, something other than yourself to believe in. Goal setting is super important. And then professional development, self-development is very important. Those things have helped me in my life to move forward. And it took me 20 plus years to get my higher education doctorate degree by using all those principles. I didn't always have a strong foundation. I grew up at a pretty young age. I didn't have one because my life was sort of, I don't know, I had a lot of internal struggles that we all do. I was always searching. I had this huge loneliness inside of me. And so I was always searching for something to help me grow stronger. Which I became a Christian in my early 20s. And that was it for me. I had searched many other times before that. There was just an emptiness in my soul. And so when I found that, I became a Christian through reading a children's Bible and discovering on my own that I wanted salvation through Christ. And so, but it didn't, although when I first became a Christian, I was very enthusiastic. I was just bubbling over with happiness and joy and all those things. And I was going to church and doing all those things. But that's really when, I don't know, it was tough. It's like things heated up in my life, and it wasn't just an overnight thing for me. It's taken me years to develop my Christianity. And honestly, when it started getting really stronger is after my husband passed away, and I really had to dig in and rely completely on God because I was so alone. My children were out of the house already, and two of my children moved away from this area and with the grandchildren. And I don't know, I was really found myself completely alone, except for my animals. Now they are a godsend. They are something, in my opinion, God gave us to help us in our lonely times or our soul. So building a strong foundation took me, maybe not for others, took me years, and it's finally at a good place. But that's why I need my higher power in my life, because without him, I would fall apart. I couldn't do it. For me, I had this horrible anxiety about death at a very young age. I think maybe because I had a lot of experiences with it, but for whatever reason, I had horrible anxiety about it. And I suffered with it for years, but through my faith, I have come to actually embrace moving over to the other side, death. And I try to study it and grow my spirit more and more so I'm strong. So it takes time sometimes, but I'd love to help anyone through my experiences. I always say, if you have comments, if you want me to do research, I would love to help you in any way I can. To help support me, you could subscribe, like, ring the bell. I am going to keep on here. I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be going, so I'll be here every day. Thanks for supporting me. With that, what I'm doing just recently now, part of it is because it's sort of easy for me, because I'm doing a Bible study, and I had bought this earlier on. It's with Jane Syswerda, I believe. I hope I'm saying her name right. It's easy because I always have something to research each day. And I love studying women. I love studying women in general, strong women, independent women. I've always been about that. I've always been about empowering myself. I've always been about empowering other women, and I admire women, strong women. I admire all women. But so that's why I'm doing this. So we started out with Eve, went to Sarah, Hagar, Rachel. We've done Rachel and Rebecca and Lot's wife. So what I'm finding is that the author of this Bible study has followed the Old Testament, and he's moving our way through it, and also taking us through the lineage of Christ. And you'll see, and I'll refer to it because I find it fascinating that God keeps the lineage of Christ very pure, and he talks about it throughout the Bible. And even if you don't like the Bible, think of it as a historical document. I've never seen anything negative that you can't learn from it. It's pretty remarkable. So with that, today we have gotten into, so I'm going to see, when I first started reading it, so it's Tamra, and she is the daughter-in-law of Judah. Now, I'm like, who's Judah? For some reason, I missed somewhere where we found out who Judah was. So I kind of did a little bit of research on who Judah was. Plus I have an article on it. So Judah is the fourth son of the patriarch Jacob and his first wife Leah. So we studied Leah. We studied, was it Rachel, Rebecca, and Leah? Gosh, sorry. Oh, I'm trying to remind myself. Rachel, I think it was Rachel and Rachel. Yeah, Rachel and Leah. So they were sisters. And that was Jacob's, I think. Oh, see, I've already. Okay, so Judah. So Judah is the fourth son of the patriarch Jacob. So remember, Jacob was the son, one of the sons of, oh gosh. I'm trying to let you know this because I think it's important. Because it follows in that bloodline. So Jacob was Rebecca and Isaac. I think. I'm sorry. It's. I want to make sure that I know. Yes. So Isaac was Abraham's son. Rebecca was the one that went to the well. She came out to the well. Abraham sent a servant to find someone in that stayed in his lineage to marry someone to his son Isaac. Rebecca came out to the well, said all the right things. We knew she was sent from God. They had this beautiful love story, and then she gave birth to two twins, Jacob and Esau, I believe. Oh gosh, it's hard to remember them all, but it's good to remember them all. And so Esau didn't want his birthright. Jacob did. Rebecca tricked her husband, Isaac, when he was dying, and Jacob ended up with the birthright. Then Esau wanted it back. So now these brothers are feuding, and Jacob ran from Esau because he was trying to kill him to get his birthright back. Okay, so now we know who Judah was. Judah is the fourth son, and Leah was the first wife of Jacob. So Jacob was tricked by his father-in-law Laban. Jacob said, I will work for you for 7 days. He loved Rachel. Rachel was beautiful, right? Leah was the older daughter who we are told that she had, she wasn't easy on the eyes, whatever that means. She was the older sister, so Jacob was tricked by the father-in-law into marrying her, and then he worked another 7 years and married Rachel. So now we know Rachel, however, was barren for several years. Finally, eventually, God did bless her with 2 sons. And so now, but Judah was not one of her sons. This is the older daughter and Jacob's 4th son. Okay, so now we know who Judah is. So we also know that he's still in the lineage of Christ, that we are following the lineage that eventually leads down to Christ. Okay, so Judah is the 4th son of the patriarch Jacob and his first wife Leah. His full brothers are Reuben, Simon, and Levi, all older, and half brothers Issachar. And okay, so also when Rachel wasn't able to birth children for Jacob, she gave Jacob her 2 handmaidens. So there's several sons involved in this. Half brothers Issachar and Jebulun by Leah's handmaid, and 1 full sister Diana. He had 8 half brothers total. And then I know Joseph and Benjamin were Rachel and Jacob's. Woo! Okay, So sorry. I feel that's important. I don't, when I was reading it, I'm like, who the heck is Judah and when he come in the story? So remember, he is son of Jacob and Leah. So we know that. And Leah was not so much loved by Jacob at first. He was in love with Rachel because of her, for whatever reason. After Rachel died, I had to wonder if maybe at that point he fell more in love with Leah. Now, we did read yesterday that Rachel was actually buried when she passed away from childbirth, from giving birth to Benjamin. She was actually buried along the road on the way they were traveling. Leah, in fact, was put in a tomb with her in-laws, Abraham and Sarah, and then Jacob. So she was honored more. I don't know what that means. Maybe in time they actually, he loved her more. I hope so. That's my thought. I want to believe that, Okay, so now, once again, we know who Judah is now. So we're going to go ahead on with the actual Bible study and what it says about Tamar. So Tamar is the daughter-in-law of Judah. So Tamar is the daughter-in-law of Judah. Her name means date tree or palm tree. This is her character. She was driven by one overwhelming need. She sacrificed, her reputation and nearly her life to achieve her goals. This is Genesis 38, Matthew 1:3. So with that, with the story today, I like to always get quotes. I'm a quote person. I like them. I don't know if that makes me a romantic, maybe. I don't know. But I always have to think about it. I'm like, well, what's our story about today? Our story is about not being honest and really being deceitful. And so I thought, well, let's look and see what kind of quotes are on deceit. There's a lot of quotes out there, everyone. So this is what I came up with. Be careful who you trust. The devil was once an angel. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Well, that was Walter Scott. If I don't say the author, it's an unknown author. It is amazing how complete is a delusion that beauty is goodness. That's Leo Tolstoy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. This is one of my favorite ones. One of my favorite books has always been Proverbs. This is Proverbs 31:30, and there's one in there specifically on how women should pattern their lives, and it's not the outer beauty; it is the inner beauty. But I don't know. Our world is sort of based on beauty. It's hard not to take care of yourself. You know what I mean? And I don't know. But it's always better to be humble and beautiful inside, right? And honest and pure. Okay, so the last one is one I like. The devil doesn't come dressed in a red cape and pointy horns. He comes as everything you've ever wished for. Pray for wisdom and discernment. And I started thinking about that too, and I'm like, that can be so true, especially in our youth, I feel like. So part of me, after my husband passed away, before that, I didn't think much about my age at all. I'm like, I love where I'm at. I was happy, married. We came a long way. When you're young, you go through so many things. And so, I was completely content. But then after my husband passed away, I all of a sudden became really subconscious about how old I am. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? Oh, why, at my age, I'm not going to meet anyone. All of those things. And like, I don't know. I just, for some reason, because I'm single now, I became very aware of it. And also because for some weird reason, I don't know, God's perfect. And so I am just starting my career now. I think part of it was because I wasn't humble enough. I mean, I don't know. He leads us by his divine plan, right? I wasn't at a good place, maybe. I don't know. But um, you have to just embrace where you're at and go with it. But I have to say it's harder. I never used to be like that, but um, I don't know. I have to not let it get in my head. So I just don't let whatever age I'm at get in my head, because it doesn't matter, because I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm doing bodybuilding. I'm doing all these things, and it's the best I've ever felt. So I have to embrace my age and be thankful for it. Be very blessed that I am at the age I'm at, and that I understand what I do. And I think with age comes wisdom. And experiences and things, And so like right at first, when I was widowed and everything, there was this huge hole inside of me. And I don't know, I was pretty overweight then. I was insecure, all these things, because I just I don't know, I was in a weird place. And so I'm glad that I'm at the age I'm at, because I believe that my age has given me enough wisdom and discernment that I won't fall into deceptive things, right? Hopefully. We're all human. We're human beings. And so were the women of the Bible. So with that, that's our quotes today. Let's go back to Tamar. So we know that she was driven by an overwhelming need, and she sacrificed her reputation and nearly her life to achieve her goals. Now, keep in mind that God wants to keep this bloodline pure. And so as you remember that Abraham did not want his son to marry into the Canaanites. I hope I'm saying that right. Canaan people, there's a certain people that he was living among. He didn't want his son to marry into them. He wanted them to go to his people in his bloodline. So, okay, back to it. Judah got a wife for So E-R, so Judah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, might have been from the Canaanite people. I'm not sure about that. I shouldn't say it. So Judah got a wife for and remember, we read also that a lot of the marriages were arranged, because the father would usually arrange marriages. The kids usually don't have any say in it, and it usually was, remember, very young age, 12, 13 years old. Her name was Tamar. So we know that Judah's son, married Tamar, and Judah had arranged it. But was wicked in the Lord's sight. So the Lord put him to death. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Judah had married somebody from Canaan, I think. I remember this story somewhat, and it was interesting because I believe Judah would often go and hook up with prostitutes. He was sort of given to going with prostitutes. And in this place where they lived, there was lots of it. And I think that was pretty common. In fact, I think the author is going to talk about it. So I believe was one of those sons from another, a certain marriage. Then Judah said to Onan, okay, so one of Judah's sons is Onan, the other one is So he lost his son he died. And it says, because was wicked, the Lord put him to death. So then Judah said to Onan, and this is son, lie with your brother's wife, Tamar, and produce offspring for your brother. So they wanted to keep it in the, I'm assuming was the oldest brother. So Judah was trying to have children in his bloodline, to produce children. And so he wanted Tamar, his older son's widow, to lay with Onan, his next son in line. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So Onan knew that if Tamar got pregnant, that it wouldn't be his child. It would be more, probably Judah would raise him. So he knew that the offspring wouldn't be his. So whenever he laid with his brother's wife, Tamar, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from producing offspring for his brother. So he didn't want to do that. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight. So he put him to death also. So now this is Judah's sons, and Onan, and they both were put to death. So Judah then said to his daughter-in-law, Tamar, live as a widow in your father's house, so live in my house until my son Shelah grows up. So Shelah must have been very young, for he thought, he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. So I guess at least Judah was taking care of Tamar, Okay, when Tamar was told, your father-in-law, now this is Tamar. Now Judah already had deceived, done that wasn't good, and married outside of the bloodline that he was told not to marry into, but he did. And because of that, he ended up losing 2 sons. Well, that's my thought. I'm sorry. I shouldn't project that. I think I read it somewhere. So now this is Tamar's deception. Now, when she was told that your father-in-law Judah is on his way to Timnon to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, for she saw that through Shelah, which is the younger son, though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. So she was still barren, basically. When Judah saw her, so Judah was going along. Remember, he likes prostitutes. Remember that he's given for that. He thought she was a prostitute because she probably dressed herself to look like one. Now, I don't know how many times these men are deceived by women disguising themselves as something else. But when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, not really realizing that she was his daughter-in-law. He went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. So he slept with her, and she had deceived him, right? And she became pregnant by him. So this is her father-in-law. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, there were twins in her womb. So this is Genesis 38, 6 through 11. Okay, so I'm wondering, so twins kind of came, so twins skipped a generation normally. So there were twins in Isaac and Leah, right? No, there were twins in Rebecca is when the twins were. So now it's gone to here. So prostitution, Tamar's life and times. As inherent as it seems to us, prostitution was actually an expression of worship in the ancient Near East. Pagan peoples often believed that fertility gods granted blessings to those who practiced cultic prostitution. The sacrifices and the payments for the use of a cult prostitute brought huge amounts of money into the coffers of the god or goddesses being worshipped. The sexual intercourse itself symbolized the hope for fertility and the abundance of the harvest. Judah, a widower who had only recently recovered from his grief. Judah was also a widower. I didn't know that, I guess. Traveled to Timnah during, and I think he had married a Canaanite as well. Traveled to Timnah during sheep shearing time to watch his own sheep being sheared. It may be that when he saw Tamar, he took her as a shrine prostitute and had intercourse with her to ensure a good crop of wool. Okay, so evidently he believed in the pagan people's gods at that time. This is what it sounds like to me. This, of course, in no way justifies Judah's act, but it does shed some light on his possible motives. Shrine prostitutes usually kept themselves heavily veiled before and during the act of intercourse, an attempt to create the illusion. For some reason, I just thought of something, because I'm still trying to figure out how you can be that deceived by somebody wearing, how you would not know it's your daughter-in-law just because she was wearing a veil. But then I started thinking of, because of COVID-19, how everybody's wearing masks nowadays, and how sometimes you don't know who they are. You can kind of tell if you know the person, though. So anyway, it just caught okay. So shrine prostitutes usually kept themselves, all right. This practice worked in Tamar's favor, giving her the perfect disguise so that her father-in-law would never recognize her. Now, but think about like Halloween parties sometimes when you're wearing a mask sort of over your hood. So I guess, I don't know. Prostitution was Prostitution was imagery used often by the biblical prophets to describe Israel's waywardness, their proneness to follow false gods. They saw God as a husband of Israel, her keeper and her true love. Whenever the Israelites turned from the true God to false gods, they prostituted themselves. It is a strong picture, but an accurate one of turning away from the God who truly loved them and was willing to care for them and watch over them if only they would remain true to him. So our life and times. Tamar's story takes us by surprise, repulses us. We recoil from the sordid details of prostitution and find little to inspire us. Yet stories like Tamar's are what make the Bible so believable. Who would ever invent such a thing, then record it not only in the historical narrative, but also in the lineage of the Messiah? Only the God of eternal surprises, the God who takes the unfit, the desperate, and the profane, and uses them to his eternal and holy purposes. Okay, so I'm going to read some of these, she has questions in here, and sometimes I read them, sometimes it doesn't, I don't know, but I'm going to just read a couple and see if maybe it fits with what we're doing today. So this is Genesis 38, which I have open. Onan was supposed to father children through Tamar for his brother. This is the same act as that of the kinsman redeemer found in the book of Ruth. The closest of kin was to father a child to carry on the line of the deceased husband. Although the act may seem offensive to us today, what do you think God's purpose was in decreeing such a plan? I think at that time, if I'm not mistaken, they were trying to populate the earth, but also remember the bloodline that follows eventually to Christ. He was trying to keep it in the bloodline. So none of the men in Tamar's life fulfilled their responsibilities to her, including her father-in-law, Judah. Describe how you think Tamar must have been feeling throughout the course of the events. Well, lonely. I mean, I understand being lonely and probably not having children. She was probably, I mean, back, then her clock was ticking, right? So she's like, I mean, for me, I've had my children. I'm very fulfilled, but it does lead, like, being single is a little bit lonely, it is. And I think just even thinking back on Adam and Eve, Adam was lonely. So a part of us wants that togetherness, and so probably that was Tamar so desperate to have a child. I would think so. I think that we sort of by nature want that, right? Are you, as someone desperate to have children? How do the ordeals of infertility today compare to what Tamar was feeling? So I understand that too. I've never felt that, but I have known people who have. I don't know if I skipped something because there was someplace in here where I don't know where, but someplace in here. So he found out Tamar was pregnant and he was going to put her to death because I don't know if we read that in here, but I don't see it anywhere. But he was going to put her to death because he thought, well, who she slept with? It wasn't Onan, right? And so, although he went to prostitutes, he thought, well, why, she's not supposed to do that. So he was going to put her to death. But then when he was with her and he thought she was a prostitute, during that time, he paid her in certain or jewelry. So he gave her all this jewelry to pay her. Because she knew that, she sent them to him so that he would know it was her he actually slept with, and it was his children she was going to give birth to. So because he did that, he did spare her. I like this one too. What does Tamar's inclusion in the lineage of Christ tell you about God's power to bring good out of tragic events? How many times has he often saved people who are either in prostitution or, forgiven them, and then they've turned into apostles, or, I think it means that we can all be God's children and become the best we can be, no matter who we are or the sins of our past. So don't give up. Okay, so with that, I am going to go ahead. I got an article that gives us a little more detail about who Tamar was in the Bible, because a lot of times these stories don't tell you as much. You get some out of the Bible, but I like to look and see what other people's interpretations are, because sometimes I get a little more. And I did find, it looks like I found another quote, and I like it. Some people try to turn back their odometers. That's why I remembered it, because I was telling you how hard it's been where my age was. And I thought about it. Geez, not me, it says. Some people try to turn back their odometers. I thought about it. Not me. I want people to know why I look this way. I've traveled a long way, and some of the roads weren't paved. So I like that. It was a good reminder to me, right? Okay, so Judah is the fourth son of the patriarch Jacob and his wife Leah. His full brothers are Reuben, We read that already. One full sister, Diana, which is a whole other story too. So Judah has 8 half-brothers total. So Tamar was the name of 2 unique women whose unusual stories can be found in the Old Testament. The first Tamar we read about in Scripture was the widow of and Onan. So I don't know, maybe it seems like she was a widow of Onan, so that's odd. If I don't know that they were married. Sons of Judah, Jacob's fourth-born son. The second was a sister of Absalom and daughter of King David, who was raped by her half-brother Ammon. Okay. So story 1, Tamar and Judah, Genesis 38, intersects the Joseph narrative with an absolutely bizarre story regarding one of Joseph's brothers. That's right. I was going to also tell you that Joseph, remember Joseph, the story of Joseph? So Joseph had all these brothers, and Joseph's father spoiled him more than the others. And so the brothers hated Joseph. And remember that Joseph was taken, brothers took him and was going to basically kill him. I think they put him in this big open pit, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry if I'm off on this. Joseph of many colors, his dad had made him this coat of many colors. So they left Joseph in a pit to die. The only reason they didn't kill him is Judah, the one we're talking about, said, spare him, we'll kill our father. The father loved Joseph. So Judah was the one that helped spare his life. And Joseph later on, remember, did incredible things. Okay, so Joseph brothers, Judah and his relationship with his daughter-in-law Tamar. In the story, Judah, the fourth-born son of Jacob, Israel, had left his father and brothers and married oh yeah, here we go. That's what I was thinking. So he had left his father and brothers and married a Canaanite woman named Shuya. When their oldest son came of age, Judah and Shua found him a wife named Tamar. So I believe Tamar must have been not of a Canaanite. However, according to Scripture, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life, making Tamar a widow. And see, Judah was warned not to marry a Canaanite woman as well. So God is going to keep that lineage. He's going to keep that lineage pure. And both those sons died an early death, and so did the wife. In levirate marriage, the duty of the brother-in-law was to father a male heir with his brother's widow to carry his brother's name and ensure his inheritance. Deuteronomy 25:5. In this case, the responsibility fell to Onan, Er's younger brother. Now, although Onan took Tamar, as his wife, I didn't realize that. They didn't tell us that part of it. Although he did marry her, take her for his wife, he refused to bear a child that he would not be able to call his own. So instead of conceiving a child with Tamar, Onan wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. It was a vile act that displeased the Lord, and so he, the Lord, took his life also. Now, twice widowed, Tamar was childless and alone. Here, Judah was expected to provide another one of his sons to marry and care for Tamar. But rather than offer up his third son, Judah refused, telling Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers. So he probably knew that because of the way he married, his sons may die an early death. Now, although Judah argued that he wanted to wait until Shelah was older, it's clear that he had no intention of marrying off another son to Tamar, an inexcusable neglect of his fatherly duties and injustice. Deceitful again. Not only that, but Judah had grossly assumed that Tamar was the cause of and Onan's downfall. So he blamed it on Tamar, their deaths. a failure to acknowledge and address the sins of his own children. And then the story takes another odd turn. Later, after Judah's wife had passed, Tamar disguised herself as a harlot and offered herself to Judah, unbeknownst to him, for he did not recognize her. 3 months later, when Judah learned that Tamar was pregnant, he insisted Tamar be punished. That's when Tamar brought forth Judah's staff, seal, and cord that Judah had given her when he went to bed with her, which he had given to her on the night of their encounter, to prove that he in fact was the father. In doing so, she had tricked Judah into performing the duties his son should have. Filled with guilt, Judah recognized his sin and acknowledged his failure to provide for his daughter-in-law, confessing, "She is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah." So he must have understood his sin at that point. In doing so, Judah became one of the first recorded examples of a public confession of personal sin. Well, at least he confessed it, because he didn't have to, right? He could have easily said, "I don't know who she is," and had her put to death. Tamar and Judah later bore twin boys named Perez and Zerah. Ironically, out of Perez's line, both king, see? The lineage again. Out of Perez's line, both King David and later Jesus Christ, the Messiah, were born. So Tamar was in the right bloodline. So Perez later had King David, and then later on down, Christ Jesus. Matthew 1:3. This is testament by God's prevailing mercy, for even the most flawed and sinful of men can be used and blessed by God, not because of their merit, because of his grace and the power of repentance. So story 2, Tamar, Amnon, and Absalom, 2 Samuel 13. The second Tamar of the Old Testament. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to read that one, because I think we would probably, I'm guessing we may read another Tamar story. Let's see. Yeah, Tamar, daughter of King David. So that comes quite a bit later. I think I'm going to save that one so that we get to read it. What do these stories mean? 2 women, 2 stories. Both deal with the spiritual blindness of father figures and the spiritual corruption and moral failure of young men. Both stories reveal injustices toward women and explore the consequences of sexual sin upon families. Both unusual accounts, the grace of God is on display for those willing to confess and repent from their sin. Okay, so that's a little bit, gave us a little bit more on Tamar. I think I had something else in here, because, oh gosh, we're doing better today. I try to make an hour. Let's see if this has any more. Tamar, whose story is embedded in the ancestor narrative Genesis, is the ancestress of much of the tribe of Judah, and in particular of the house of David. She is the daughter-in-law of Judah, who acquires her for his firstborn son, Okay. So he just goes on to say, Judah wanted her to marry Onan to secure a place in his family. Onan, however, would make a considerable economic sacrifice. According to inheritance customs, the estate of Judah, who had 3 sons, would be divided into 4 equal parts, with the eldest son acquiring 1/2 and the other ones 1/4 each. The child engendered for would inherit at least 1/4. Well, this is an interesting take on it. Now we see sort of why Onan maybe wouldn't have wanted. So a child engendered for would inherit at least 1/4 and possibly 1/2 as the son of the firstborn. If remained childless, then Judah's estate would be divided into 3, with the eldest, most probably Onan at that point, inheriting 2/3. Onan opts to preserve his financial advantage and interrupts coitus with, I would guess, getting pregnant with Tamar, spilling his semen on the ground. For this, God punishes Onan with death, as God has previously punished Er for doing something wicked. Okay, so they're saying that Onan was doing it for the financial advantage, because if he would father, I'm guessing, if he would father a son that was Er's, then that son would get some of the inheritance instead of Onan getting all of it. Although the readers know that God has killed 2 of Judah's sons, Judah does not. He suspects that Tamar is a lethal woman, a woman whose sexual partners are all doomed to die. So Judah is afraid to give Tamar his youngest son, Shelah. As a result, Judah wrongs Tamar. According to Near Eastern custom known from the Middle Asian laws, Ashiran, if a man has no son over 10 years old, he could perform the levirate obligation himself. If he does not, the woman is declared a widow, free to marry again. So Judah, who is perhaps afraid of Tamar's lethal character, could have set her free, but he does not. He sends her to live as a widow in her father's house. Unlike other widows, she cannot remarry and must stay chaste on pain of death. She is also in limbo. That's sad, isn't it? Very sad. So ostensibly, Tamar is only waiting for Shelah to grow up and mate with her, but after time passes, she realizes that Judah is not going to affect that union. So therefore, devises a plan to secure her own future by tricking her father-in-law into having sex with her. She's not planning incest. A father-in-law may not sleep with his daughter-in-law, just as a brother-in-law may not sleep with their sister-in-law. But in-law incest rules are suspended for the purpose of the levirate. The levirate is, after all, only a surrogate for the dead husband. Okay, so basically playing a surrogate. Tamar's plan is simple. She covers herself with a veil so that Judah won't recognize her, and then sets in the roadway for the entrance to Onan, which, I mean, he falls for prostitutes. What's that say about him? The NRSV translates this as temple prostitute, but another Akendisha was not a sacred prostitute. She was a public woman who might be found along the roadway, as virgins and married women should not be. She could engage in sex, but might also be sought out for lactation, midwifery, and other female concerns. By looking for a Kadeshian, Hiram can look for a public woman without revealing Judah's private life. The woman, of course, is nowhere to be found. Judah, mindful of his public image, calls off the search rather than become a laughingstock. But there is a greater threat to his honor. Rumor relates that Tamar is pregnant and has obviously been faithless, to her obligation to Judah to remain chaste. Judah, as the head of the family, acts swiftly to restore his honor, commanding that she be burnt to death. But Tamar has anticipated this danger. She sends his identifying pledge to him, urging him to recognize that its owner is the father. Realizing what has happened, Judah publicly announces Tamar's innocence. His cryptic phrase, Zedekiah Menimi, is often translated, she is more in the right than I, which he didn't have to do that. He could have easily just said, forget it all. So a recognition not only of her innocence, but also of his wrongdoing is not freeing her or performing the levirate. Another possible translation is, she is innocent. The child, is from me. Judah has now performed the levirate despite himself and never cohabits with Tamar again. Oh, when she is pregnant, future sex with the late son's wife would be incestuous. Okay. So he can get her pregnant, but then can't marry her, it sounds like. Tamar's place in the family and Judah's posterity are secured. She gives birth to twins, Perez and Zerah, thus restoring 2 sons to Judah. So he lost his 2 sons. Now he has 2 sons that are from the lineage that God approves of. So their birth is reminiscent of the birth of Rebekah's twin sons. Remember? Yeah, Rebekah's. Okay. Of which Jacob came out holding Esau's heel. Perez does him one better. The midwife marks Zerah's hand with a scarlet cord when it emerges from the womb first. I wonder if that actually happens. That'd be awesome to see, wouldn't it? But Perez, whose name means bear or breach, edges his way through. From his line would come David. Now that's interesting. Tamar was assertive of her rights and subversive of convention. She was also deeply loyal to Judah's family. These qualities also show up in Ruth, who appears later in the lineage of Perez and preserves Boaz's part of that line. The blessing of Ruth's wedding underscores the similarity in its hope that Boaz's house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Tamar and Ruth's traits of assertiveness and action, willingness to be unconventional, and deep loyalty to family are the very qualities that distinguish their descendant, King David. That was super interesting. Super interesting. Okay, so, goodness. Although the women, well, it says Tamar and Ruth were somewhat deceptive, it seemed that God turned it into good. I mean, so if Judah would have kept did what he was supposed to do, that's what God wanted him to do. And although Tamar was deceptive, God used it for good. That's what I wanted to say. If it didn't come out right. Okay, goodness, that was good. That was a super good one. Although there was a lot of stuff going on in there, deception and all those things, we learned a lot. I was just trying to read and see if there's anything else. I don't see anything else in there. I'm trying to stall. I've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and I can actually make an hour today. I don't know why I like to do that, but I feel like I should be at least teaching for an hour. So tomorrow we are talking about Potiphar's wife. So here we go again. Remember Lot's wife? The wife is never named. Isn't that strange? I wonder if it's done that way because they don't want us to take them as significant, but they're significant enough to talk about. So maybe it's a lesson or something. So Potiphar's wife is the wife of a prosperous and influential Egyptian. She was unfaithful and vindictive, ready to lie in order to protect herself and ruin an innocent man. So, I hear a helicopter outside. Reminds me of Nick whenever I hear that. Okay, so tomorrow's Potiphar's wife, another lesson, an Egyptian, it sounds like, who was, oh goodness, Sarah's handmaiden. Hagar was an Egyptian, an African believe an African Egyptian, who she ended up being blessed. She had sons by Abraham, and they end up Hagar, and then they end up being blessed later on. So, okay, guys, we made an hour. All right, that was good today. I thought that was good. It took me a minute. I'm trying to recap for you. It's also for me, because I think it's important we keep going over the lineage and where we're heading to and where we've came, right? To remember, and it's hard to remember it all, but I'm trying to. So thanks for joining. Make sure you subscribe and like and share. Send me, if you want me to research something, send me comments. If the comments make sense, I will reply to them. I seem to get some on here that are strange. I'm afraid of cyber stuff. So if I don't answer, it's because I don't understand the question or comment. So, okay, we're in the middle of the week. It's going fast. Beautiful outside. Enjoy your weather. Please be blessed, and I'm sending much love your way. Have a super terrific Wednesday.